Now, as the world reacts to the killing of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer, thousands of people are taking part in demonstrations across the world. Demonstrators are once again bringing the Black Lives Matter movement to the fore. Joining me now to talk about the movement is in this current time, is the co-founder of Black Lives Matter, Opal Tomedy. Opal, good evening and thank you for your time tonight. It is a difficult moment, again, as we're having this conversation, watching pictures coming out of London, a confrontation between police and protesters. Talk to us about the legacy of structural racism and how it is impacting lives even today, not only in America, but all across the world.
Well, I think this is an important conversation for us to be having, and I'm really grateful to be starting from a sense of the structural needs. Historically, Black people in the U.S. and really around the globe have been faced with all sorts of anti-Black racism, and this is not just the individual, person-to-person racism, but embedded in our systems. We see that there is a bias towards Black people. And what we're seeing now is an uprising that, yes, started in the United States, but it's really it's cross borders, and we see that people around the globe are standing alongside us, but they're really standing up for injustice and standing against injustice, I should say, in their own context, because they know that this anti-Black racism is actually a global phenomenon, and it stems from the legacy of enslavement, colonialism, and so on. And so we see the manifestations of racism even in today's society, and we see it not only in the extrajudicial killing of unarmed Black people like we're protesting about now, but it's the structural impediments that actually led up until this moment. I've been trying to share with people that the type of uprising that we're witnessing right now actually, stems from a general sense of discontent with the status quo. If we really take a deeper look at what's happening, we'll be reminded that people are coming and out because of the pandemic as well, right? So if you take a look at what's happening in the United States, in the States, we have a pandemic that has killed over 100,000 people. And if you just sit with that number, these aren't just numbers. These are people, these are individuals with families, with people who cared for them, people who had jobs, and it's devastating to communities. It's devastating to neighborhoods. It's devastating to entire populations. And we're witnessing that Black people, and specifically African Americans, have been acutely impacted by COVID-19 as well. And this is not any fault of their own, but there are a number of structural impediments and structural injustices that led to this disproportionate impact on Black people. We're only 13% of the population in the United States, yet almost a third of the people who died from COVID-19 are Black. And so what we're seeing in these uprisings is really a general sense of displeasure, anger, sadness, righteous indignation, quite frankly, because our government has decided to deal with that pandemic, both health-wise, economically, and beyond, at a very piecemeal approach. Yeah. People have lost their jobs. Over 40 million people have lost their jobs. People are sick. People have been dying, and so folks are upset. And then to deal with the pandemic of racism that's manifesting the killings. So
let's dive in a little bit deeper, particularly in what we're seeing with the George Floyd killing under the knee of a Minneapolis white police officer. In terms of law and the practices of law in the United States, and how that is used to control Black bodies, where does that stem from and where does it come from?
In the United States, we have a long history of violence towards Black people. Let's just call it what it is. From the slavery in the U.S. to the resistance against it, and then Jim Crow and beyond. What I try to remind people of in this day and age is that policing actually stems from slave patrols. back in the day, these were actual slave patrols who were designated to go out and capture people who were runaway. I even hate the word slave, but quote unquote slave. These are enslaved Africans, right? And so they were deputized to go out and catch us. And this is the same history that binds us to today, right? It binds us to modern day. So the types of laws that emerged in that context, from vagrancy to congregation to whether or not you were you were whistling at somebody, and there are all of these incidents that have happened over the years in which Black people were targeted, were profiled, and were legally allowed to be lynched. And what we're seeing now is that almost every 28 hours in the United States, an unarmed Black person, woman, man, child, gets killed by police. And we're calling for an end to this war on Black lives. Enough is enough. We've been seeing this ever since we've been on this continent and in this country, and we've had enough. We started Black Lives Matter over 7 years ago. We'll be celebrating our 8th anniversary here in July, and we have not seen the type of movement that we're seeing now. We haven't seen the type of action that we've needed for far too long. And so people have had enough. We're in the day and age where we're very much so connected. We have our technology and our tools where we're able to share our messages. We're able to share our concerns and our demands. And so we're ensuring that people know what we're talking about. People know that this injustice is impacting our community. And for far too long, people were silent about it. People weren't uprising about it. And this is the time where people have finally, maybe it's because of the pandemic, right? The pandemic, they've been able to no longer, maybe they're not working anymore or not the same types of hours. And so they have the ability to join us in the street. They're observing what's going on. They don't like what's happening. And we see this multiracial movement for Black lives.